Good afternoon, participants. We're very glad to have you with us this afternoon for yet another webinar series at Higher. For those of you who've been here before, welcome back. For those of you who are new to Higher, a very quick introduction. My name is Pallavi Dwivedi. I'm the founder at Higher, and Higher is a teacher professional development and evaluation company. Over the last few weeks, now almost over a month, we've been organizing a series of webinars and virtual workshops for teachers to help upskill them and to help them switch gears to remote teaching and learning. The larger aim or the larger objective of our interventions has really been to help you get a better sense of good teaching practices and best practices that you can take back with you even when we move to normal classrooms and schools start running as per usual. And today, to help us with upskilling and specifically for all of our primary school teachers, we have with us Sonia Singh. Sonia is the primary years coordinator at Prometheus School in Noida. And she is now an expert for over the last couple of decades when it comes to training teachers, specifically training teachers within the primary space. She's a technology enthusiast and is a pedagogy expert as well. And I'm sure that going forward in today's session, we'll have lots to learn from Sonia about her experiences, both as a primary years coordinator, having run primary years programs, having been interacting with teachers at her own school as well as across the board, where she's helped set up primary wings and trained primary teachers across the board as well. So you'll have lots of opportunities to ask your questions, to learn from her, to understand how you can bring more buzz to your own primary classrooms. So Sonia, over to you, and welcome participants once again to today's session.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you so much for such kind words. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And yes, a very exciting webinar is what we are looking forward to. I'm a very strong believer that every child actually can achieve anything that he wants. The point is we pitch it at the right level. So typical belief of like every primary teacher who believes that constructivism by Piaget is one of our major pedagogies that we must be following. That is something that forms the base for today's webinar. So it's my belief that every child will construct his or her own learning relating to his past experiences. The point for a facilitator or a teacher is to be able to identify those past experiences for every child. If that is what you've achieved, what he can make connections with his past experiences, I think you have achieved in the child learning whatever you want him to do. So taking this forward is what we are going to be dealing with today, and we'll be dealing with differentiation. So if you bear with me, I will just share my screen so that we can just begin. So exactly what I said was that I like to bring smiles to the faces of little children. So what I feel is that we need to positively drop that T from the word can't. The moment for every child, if you can drop the T from the word can't, you have achieved it and you have smiling children. And that's what brings us to the topic today, differentiation. So in this, what we are going to be covering is to appreciate the need for differentiation and what are the different strategies for these differentiations. There is no hard and fast rule for differentiation. There is nothing specific that you have to do this. It's going to be completely dependent on you, your classroom, your children, and their past experiences. So what I'm going to be sharing with you are just some ideas and tools. Please feel free, apply them, tweak them, twist them, and make them to your best experience. So, as Pallavi had also mentioned, in today's time, we've moved on to remote learning. So besides appreciating the need for differentiation, we are also going to be covering the different ways to differentiate and What are the strategies in a synchronous classroom and asynchronous? I know there are some schools which are going completely synchronous, whereas some which are following the blended form of synchronous and asynchronous. So I'll try and equip you with enough strategies where you can apply in synchronous or asynchronous. A very, very popular picture. I'm sure most of you, or in fact, all of you would have seen it. The fact is not just seeing it. Have you ever experienced it? Have you experienced it as a student, or have you given this time to your students? I know for one, I have experienced it as a student for sure. I was made to sing positively and I just can't sing to even save myself. And I was assessed on it. And I was told I'm a very bad singer. But I know that. I know I'm terrible at it. So there was nothing that I had to be told about. So that is something which never brought the smile to my face. Now is the time when we as educators try our best that to bring the smile to everyone's face, we don't give them the same common task or an engagement. So that's what we will be doing. Let's define the differentiation together. I'm sure all of you are already experiencing that in your class. No two children can ever be the same. You will find children, somebody who's very good in language, somebody who's very good in mathematics, somebody who has a scientific bent of mind, somebody who's got an abstract art bent of mind. All of them are most welcome. All of them will eventually grow up to be successful. So how is it that within our framework do we make them learn? And that is what we define as differentiation. Can I have your definitions, please? So what I'm looking at is, in case if you have a cell phone with you, or if you can minimize this screen and visit menti.com, menti.com. The website, if you visit, it's going to ask for a code. The code is also written on top. It's going to be 688055. Please visit that, and according to you, what is differentiation? I would like all of you to please type out your definitions. The code is 688055. Menti.com, menti.com, 688055. Fantastic. I see a lovely definition. One size doesn't fit all. Teaching a topic in different ways. I like the idea of equal opportunity for every child. So instructions. It's lovely to see how each one of you is keeping the child as the main focus, as the main center. So we'll just wait for another minute so that we have a few more entries, and then this website will remain open. If you want, you can later on also add in your definitions. So great. I think most of you have already experienced what differentiation is, and you're quite familiar with it. What we will go through today is the ways that we are going to be differentiating and what are our strategies. So Carol Ann, like rightly said, she's the person who is known as the guru for differentiation. So she rightly said that differentiation is simply a teacher attending to the learning needs of a particular student or a small group of students, rather than teaching a class as though all the individuals in it were basically alike. I know for one, I have grown up where I've been taught always as a part of the whole class. I don't think I was ever paid individual attention to my likes, my typical learning style, or anything like that. Carol Ann spoke specifically that you have to attend to the learning needs of even if it is just one child in your class. So we've defined differentiation, but for once, I know what differentiation is not. It's not a set of instructional strategies. I guess somewhere, I think we wrote it to be instructional strategies. It's that extra on top of good teaching. No, please remember, all of you are good teachers. All of you are fantastic teachers. There is nothing like that extra on top of your good teaching. It's just different teaching. Okay, so please don't feel that if you are not doing differentiation, you're not a good teacher. I think all of you are fantastic. It's not only for the learning challenges that people have. It's not just for the gifted students. It's not classifying them into different abilities. If this is not what differentiation is, I thought that's what we all wrote. So what is differentiation? Differentiation is the pattern of your student need. You have to identify and make your lessons around that. It could be based for one child, it could be for a small group. It could be based on your content and your student need. It can be flexible grouping, it can be specific grouping. It has to be student focused. That was one thing which I must say all your definitions actually said. So proud of all of you. It is of course in a heterogeneous setting, and it addresses the learning and the affective needs. So a lot of emotional aspect comes into it. And how is that differentiation? You first need to know your learner. You need to know your student. You need to, before deciding that this is the child who needs help with language, you first need to know that. So for some of you, I'm sure the session would have just begun, whereas for some it would be ending and the next session would be about to begin. The first thing when your students come into your class, what you need to do is know your learners, assess your learners. Please don't make it sound like a test. Please don't make it sound like a unit review. Don't make it sound like any of those exams that you're going through. Through a playway method, just try and assess your learner for his needs. And then you start making all the adjustments. How to go about it is something I'm going to show you through Carol's video. I hope this is going to be useful to you.
A couple of years ago, one of my students who was an undergraduate preparing to be a teacher gave me a definition of differentiation that has become my favorite one. He began his definition by saying that differentiation is a sequence of common sense decisions made by teachers with a student-first orientation. It seems exactly what we should be doing. He went on to tell me what he thought the sequence of common sense decisions was. He listed 4 things, and I would add a 5th one to that. First, he said it's critically important to consciously be aware of creating a classroom environment that invites kids to the table of learning, that encourages them to take the risk of learning, that helps them understand that they need to work hard and shoot high, but also causes them to understand that there's a support system there to help with that. So the first piece is developing is learning. And my sense is that affects everything else. Second, he said he thought it was really critical that we have high quality curriculum that engages kids, and that we be able as teachers to say at any point, here's what kids should know, what they should understand, what they should be able to do as a result of this sequence of learning. In other words, it matters that we have clear learning targets, that they are understanding focused, that they're clear to us and clear to kids, and that we have organized learning around those in such a way that it makes sense to kids, that it's relevant to them. Third, he said he thought it was really important that we continue to check to see where kids are constantly relative to those learning outcomes. Not teach a whole unit, then give a test and say, well, gee, some of them got it and some of them didn't. But using pre-assessment and using formative assessment consistently so that we have a good sense at any particular moment of who's confused, who's behind, who's ahead, who's missing knowledge. Then he said the fourth step was that when you monitor the kids using formative assessment, you're likely to find out they aren't all in the same place. And so it becomes instructionally important to say, okay, now how do I tailor my lesson plans tomorrow or this week so that I can get to kids where they are? When do I need to meet with some kids in small groups and for what purpose? Are there students who need to be using different resources? Is there a different way I can help kids that didn't understand this yesterday try to wrap around it today? Those were his four elements. My fifth one is that we have to learn as teachers to lead and manage a classroom in which it's possible for more than one thing at a time to happen. As long as we ask kids to start and stop everything together, always use the same materials, always do stuff in exactly the same way, we'll hinder a lot of learning. So it becomes really critical that we learn as teachers to help kids be our partners in creating a classroom which allows for flexibility, but which also has clear structures that give kids and teachers the stability and predictability that they need. For me, differentiation is a continuum. It's not a point. You don't get to a point and say, okay, well, I finished that. It's always a question of, okay, let me acknowledge what I do, and then let me look at some rubrics, some standards, some examples of teachers, some writing, some videos, anything I can look at that can continue to help me stretch and think through what I can do better. The people that I know who are the best with differentiation can explain to you really clearly and articulately how much further they have to go. A couple of years ago.
So fantastic. Basically, so that means she spoke about 4 main ways, and the 5th one she added on her own. So is there so far any questions if you have?
Sonia, I think there are 2 questions. One is from Susmita and the other one is from Vanita. So I'll start with Vanita. Vanita, I'm going to unmute your mic if you'd like to ask Sonia your question now. Vanita, are you with us? We're not sure. I think there's a connectivity issue there. So yeah. I'll just, Susmita, go right ahead. I think they're both having some tech issues.
I think she's still mute.
I did unmute them from my end, but they'll need to also unmute their own microphones at their own ends if they've done that. Jyoti has a question, so I'll open up the floor now to Jyoti. Jyoti, over to you.
Thanks, Pallavi. Hi, Sonia ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Jyoti. Tell me.
I'm a big fan of yours, if you don't know that.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot about you from the various sectors. So it will be great to connect separately. But I'll ask Pallavi to help me in that.
Sure, sure. Anytime.
So my main, question is that when we were seeing Cal's video, there was one 4th response, that is response to students' instructional needs.
Yes.
So it happens generally. We are also from a school background and, into curriculum a lot. So when we talk about instructional needs now, the teacher somehow, is not able to respond to the instructional needs of the students with so much pressure of completing the syllabus.
Yes.
So if you could give a couple of tips of how the teachers could, segregate the students as per the instructional need, or maybe make some changes in her delivery of the lesson, it would help, really.
Fantastic, Jyoti. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So what I'm going to be covering now after this is, now that differentiation is clear, is the ways to differentiate. So if you know very clearly that, there you're going to have students where they find a certain way of learning difficult, that means I need to use different resources. So I will be covering each and every point individually and giving you examples also along with it.
Fantastic.
Again, coming to the point, like what Carol said, is that differentiation is nothing but common sense. And this is what I was laughing with Pallavi also just some time back. And I was saying, this is something which I have also experienced. And in every workshop, I have also been told the same thing, that differentiation is nothing but common sense. Because
but common sense is uncommon. That is what.
Yeah. So what we need to actually do is something that will suit your children. So I will give you a broad idea of how it can be done, ensuring the fact that I understand that teachers need to complete their curriculum as well.
Okay.
But within a classroom, of course, the teacher takes the stage and she's the one who decides, but I will positively help according to that.
Thank you so much.
I hope I'll be able to give you those answers.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'll move on ahead. So exactly, somebody had written this definition as well: one size does not fit all. So what you need to always remember is, first thing, assess the learner on that particular concept. We all have a tendency, in fact, I know for one that everyone, I also as a child, I was always told that, Sonia, you are not a social studies person. I've heard of children being labeled as, this one is a math person, this one is a science person, this one is a language person. I never understand that logic about how do you label somebody to be that. Okay, so because you will have somebody who's, okay, very comfortable and very good in a particular concept, but maybe not so comfortable in the other concept. I don't like using the word the good and the bad. I'd rather take it to the fact that something which is challenging for me, or something which I struggle for, and something which gives me that comfort. I think these are the words, if we use even for our students, they'll feel a little more motivated to be actually doing it. So before you begin any concept in a class, please have a short prior knowledge assessment positively. It can be by just asking question answers. It can be something where you just give them certain manipulatives and you ask them to create something. But a child who's very good with maybe all the four operations in mathematics may not be as good as in shape and space or visualizing geometry. So do not, label that child that he's, okay, very good with or comfortable with maths, because there could be a certain concept in which he finds it a little challenging. So assess the learner for all the different concepts and then plan to fill up those gaps. So Carol had suggested 5 ways. Her 5th way, when she said, was classroom management. What she meant was that make use of as many manipulatives and resources which are around you, which you can use to actually help your students. The 4 main ways that you can bring about differentiation is, the first one is content. I understand the fact that we teachers are, stuck between a prescribed syllabus and we need to complete that. But then again, I ask a question that how fair is it to have for a child who's still struggling with his basic sentence formation in grade 3 or 4, and we try and tell him that you need to write out a creative writing piece which is about a page. It is sure to give him failure. Instead, why not begin at that particular level where he is? Because if you try and fill up those gaps, I am sure one day he'll be able to write that 1 page. He may not be up to the level of what grade 4 expectation is, but I'm sure he'll be at least close to it. But if you start teaching from grade 4 expectation of writing a page, I'm sure he will never be even close to it. So please vary that content a little bit just to fill in that gap. And that's exactly what Piaget also had mentioned in his constructivism, that every child constructs his own knowledge based on his past experiences. So make use of those. If you make use of those, I'm sure the gaps will get filled really quickly. The second one that Carol also mentioned was the process or the instructions, as Jyoti also had this doubt on, that how do we actually vary the process in which the content would still remain the same. That means my final outcome, my final learning objective would still remain the same. But I will design my engagements in such a way that they suit different children. Yes, we teachers are superheroes. Within a class, we will design 2 or 3 or 4 engagements and actually make sure that our children work on those. I know a tough call, but trust me, you can do it. It's not difficult. Then the third is product. Finally, when the child has to actually present to you his learning, whether is it for his assessment or just for sharing it with other people, the child should be given the freedom to select the medium that he wants to express his learning in. Why are we always insisting that you write out a 2-page answer? What if the child wants to stand up and record a video and speak that way? His strength may be this. Use that strength. Because eventually in my success criteria, what is it that I'm looking at? Am I looking at that child's expression and the fact that he's picked up the content? Or am I looking at the fact that how good his English is? Somewhere your success criteria has to be very, very clear when you're looking at the product. And finally, the last is environment. How are you structuring your learning? Children will always relate their learning to things which they are familiar with, especially in today's environment when they are sitting at home. Try and relate all their topics to the stuff which they see every day, which is in their house. So your complete mathematics can happen at home. So, you can pick up things maybe for, if it's grade 4 and 5 doing area, get them to rearrange their room in such a way that they can move the beds and the tables so that they have the maximum area to play around with. So change that environment. What's the point of giving a question to a child that you need to go and construct a building in this much of area? He's not actually going out at that age to go and construct, so he can't relate to it. So the environment is not familiar to him. He'll never see that success. So vary in this. I'm nowhere saying that within a class you will need to have all 4 of them being different. No. For certain topics, identify what is it that you need to change. Do you need to work on different processes? Do you need to work on different environment or product or content? That is what you will need to be working on. The biggest struggle that we are facing now in this remote learning is the synchronous and the asynchronous, because they are little children. For the older ones, it still gets very, very easy because children can open multiple tabs, children can manage their laptops and iPads on their own. But in primary, we also have early years. We also have grade 1, 2, 3, where they are still younger ones who still need that support from their parents. So how is it that in synchronous and asynchronous can we bring about this differentiation? Because all of them would be together. So you would have 20, 30 students, all of them attending the same class. You would have 20 or 30 of them when you're giving them home tasks in the asynchronous environment. How would you be doing that? So I'm going to again give you a little task that you're going to be working on. So this is the case study that I'm giving you, that Rehan is having difficulty coping with learning about fractions. He still struggles to represent a fraction. He's in grade 3 and the class is soon beginning unlike fractions. So when I say unlike fractions, it means something like 3 by 5 and maybe 2 by 10. You as a teacher are aware of this. What would you do in a synchronous mode of classroom? So if you are taking face-to-face live session, how would you actually design your engagement? What is the differentiation that you would do with him? Is it going to be in process? Is it going to be in product? Is it going to be environment? Or is it going to be the content? And if you can think of a strategy how you're going to do, please feel free to write it. How you will do it is, once again, use either your mobile phones or just minimize the screen. go to the website, which is whiteboard.fi, and there is going to be a class code that comes in. So you will need to enter that particular class code and write your strategy. One sec, sorry. Sorry, technical glitch.
Happens to the best of us, Sonia. Don't worry. Teachers, in the meanwhile, you can, if there are any questions that you'd like Sonia to take while she's setting up the whiteboard for all of you,
this is the
you
one.
can put them up.
So that's the room code. Sorry, Pallavi, I've got it.
Sure, go ahead.
So if you just go to whiteboard.fi, it'll ask you for your name and it'll ask to join the class, which is R3D. That's the code. So it's going to look like a little paint screen to you, and there is an option to type out text there. It's written T. So if you click on T, it's going to make a text box for you. You can type out your answer and just press your cursor anywhere else. Press on T, it will allow you to type the text. I know drawing might just get a little difficult.
Teachers, in case any of you are struggling with understanding how the text box works, there's a little box there which says AA.
So capital A and a small a.
Capital A and small a. If you click on that, it'll let you start typing on your whiteboard.
It also allows you to increase your font size in case if you want to do that. So I know Anuradha has written differentiation based on outcome. Use fraction tiles, which is like a process. Yeah, so I see most of you, what you are differentiating is the process. Of course, there was somebody who also mentioned about the product. So I'll go back to the case study once again. So if I have a child who's going to be working on unlike fractions, but he's even unable to represent a fraction, it'll be a good idea that if you differentiate with content, because you'll have to bring down your content to the level where the child starts working with what is a fraction. What does basically 2/4 mean? Or what does 3/5 mean? So In case if you see, you may have whole lot of resources, you may have whole lot of tools. They just have to be used in the correct way. And once you're able to use them in the correct way, I think your differentiation is solved. So let's talk about the first way, which is the content differentiation. So I'll be giving you examples also along with it. So when I have to vary the content, I need to make sure that I work at different levels of content. So if I am a grade 3 teacher, I could have some students who are still struggling with my grade 3 content. That means I need to begin for those students either at a grade 2 or a grade 1 level content, or I could have students who are very, very comfortable with grade 3 level content. So if they're already very comfortable at that particular stage, to make them again repeat the same thing will just not excite them. And when something does not excite a child and you know he's done his task, he will positively get into behavioral issues. So you have to keep him engrossed, you have to keep him engaged. So please increase that level. So this may be your grade level, but you may have to design an engagement which is at a slightly lower level or maybe even slightly at a higher level and one which is at the same level. So if you're giving them any information through a text material, please vary those readability levels. You could also give them the same text. Now you have apps like Edpuzzle and Loom where you can actually give subtitles to it. So your main video could be covering the higher level content, but the subtitles which are there could be of the easier ones or a simpler one where the other children can read and understand. The reading material you must give so that the student has enough time. If there is a child who struggles with comfortable reading, there's no point giving him a page to read and tell him that you have to get it done in 5 minutes. It's not possible for him to do it. There could be children in your class who have fantastic thinking skills, who can make connections really well, who can take that extra step, but somewhere they are struggling with the right kind of vocabulary. So maybe if you are doing a unit which is related to science or any of the topics or a chapter which is on science, it's a nice idea if you give him some scientific vocabulary and put it on his desk or just give it to him so that he can use those typical words and express himself better. That is what gives him that kind of success. Of course, there are children who prefer visual learning or they prefer to hear things. So you can present while recording your voice as well along with it. We also have a simple tool like PowerPoint. So if you're doing any kind of PowerPoint presentations, you can record your voice and maybe send that to your children where they can sit at home and listen to you and as well see the pictures or the notes that you've written on it. Try and meet these students separately to reteach them the concept. Sometimes, within the same grade level, if you're trying to do, and you're always differentiating them on content, children can start understanding that, I am not at that same level. So it's a good idea that you take that little extra step and start teaching. It's very easy when we are in school. I know, because we can take out that extra time of the first 15 minutes or the last 15 minutes, sometimes during a specialist lesson or whatever. But in the remote learning process, maybe you'll have to give him that extra time. So maybe after your regular lessons that you are taking with the other children, ask him to join you once again on whatever platform you're using for maybe 15 minutes and give him that extra time. And of course, when you make your grouping really, really dynamic. Never fix your grouping. It's not important that every group you have to have children who are at the grade level or below the grade level or above the grade level. Sometimes it's good to have them heterogeneous also. Mix them around because children understand the best from their peers at times. So make that also happen. So it totally depends on you as a teacher. The class is yours. You take a call on it, how you do it. I give you some examples for it. So now just in case of grade 4 or 5 is doing something on a chapter which is maybe on science, which is on digestive system. Now, if I have a grade which does work at various levels, I have children whose reading abilities are at different levels. I may be doing the digestive system, which is pure science, but if the reading levels of my children are different, there's no point giving them one common content to be reading on. So I will vary that particular thing. So if you see, there is a particular comprehension which is there down the hatch. It's of course taken from the website, which is k12reader.com. pick up one which is for that particular grade level. So majority of your students would fit in there. There could be some students who struggle to read, and maybe give them a little flowchart kind of a thing, which is the next one on your right hand side, which says human body series, which is digestive system. This is picked up from kids' health in the classroom. So it's much, much simpler. The sentences are smaller, conveys exactly the same material, but brings it down. So a lot of extra information about, what are the names of those juices and what are the different types of intestines, what is the function for it, could be removed from it. Because at the moment, what the child is struggling with is to just understand how the digestive system works. You also have another one, which is, this is another very, very good website, which is called getepic.com. It's a read along. You can even assign these readings for your children. They are leveled. You can again send this work to your students based on their reading abilities. And as a result, same topic at different levels can be sent to them. So I will have exactly, this is maybe for children who already know about digestive system and you want them to start understanding the structure of each organ. So I have varied my complete content, which was on digestive system, in 3 different levels. And it's fine because it challenges all my children. It keeps them engaged, it keeps them working, and finally they present it. So once they present all that learning that has happened, children also learn from each other's presentation. So it is not just where they'll just end up and taking down notes and there'll be question answers which are lying in their notebooks and the teacher just gets to know and checks. No, get your children to present and share this information with the others. Because a child who would have read something which is at a higher reading level will present it to the other person. At least the other children will pick up those typical words. So they will understand that in stomach is the place where your fats actually break down, even if he's not read that. So use these kind of techniques in your class. So even though you're wearing the content, but your children will eventually be coming very close to the learning outcome that is expected for that particular grade. Another example, similar kind, which is on geographical terrains. This could be something, the typical landforms that we do, which is like grade 3 or grade 2 levels. So if I'm expecting my children to know the different geographical terrains and their features, I'm also asking them that they should be able to make connections between these landforms and the adaptations. I know my children are at different levels. How can I actually make this differentiation? So these are the various ways. So you could have a lot of visuals. So you could use visuals of mountains and hills and rivers and oceans and show it to the children. You could have these same visuals embedded in your own video with little subtitles. You can pick up Lexile reading stuff. Lexile is a reading method which actually measures your levels. This is done by the Scholastic. So anyone who's not familiar with it, maybe you can ask your schools to actually contact Scholastic and they take a Lexile kind of a testing for all the children, and you start understanding what level are these children reading at. Because if a children reads a book which is his level, the reading automatically improves. Some of the websites which already work on Lexile way are Readworks, newzella.org. Readworks, if you ever access, you can find the same topic. So if you are searching for landforms, you will find landforms which is for a level age group of say 6 to 7, it could be for maybe 9 and 10, and it could also vary for maybe 12 or 13 years. Do give supporting vocabulary always to students. Sometimes they understand the complete concept, but it is only because of lack of vocabulary that they are unable to explain. And finally, to keep your certain children, whom we always say are disciplinary issues, give them that extension task. Extension task does not mean that you increase the number of work. It's not that. Don't give them just another worksheet. Get them to do something. You can easily tell them that these are the 4 landforms that we've covered. I would like you to find out about one extra 5th one. So give them that challenge, give them that particular task to do. So these are the kind of things if you do in your class, they are catering to all your children for developing their content. So for the next ways to differentiate, I'm going to show you a little video. This is by Edutopia.
Look at all these great volunteers. Go ahead. Yeah. Yes, nice job. So the impact of differentiation, the students feel successful. They feel supported. They know if something is difficult for them, there's something that's a little more in line with their strengths coming up soon. So it really makes education fun and approachable. I really think it's the most effective way that I have seen to teach. Yay!
The vision and the mission of Highlander is to use innovative practice as a social catalyst. We want our kids to be able to do anything any other kid from Providence could do.
We use differentiation all across the curriculum here at Highlander, and especially in the first grade. Although the content is the same, having the stations really allows me to tailor my lessons to each individual group of learners. So how the differentiation looks in my classroom, we start off with a whole group lesson. So let's get our reading glasses on. Let's get the letter part of our brains activated. This section of our curriculum, we have been looking at nonfiction texts. When we're looking at our book today, we're going to be thinking about where we can get information. And then in the phonics realm, we focused on contractions. We're taking two words, and what are we sticking them together with? Apostrophe. Yes, Karen. And then we break off into our small groups. So our yellow group is still learning how to do a lot of our literacy things. The green group is doing pretty well, but has a few things to work on still. And our blue group is hitting all the first grade standards and needs to be stretched. So our differentiation kind of takes two forms. The first is by student grouping, and the second is by modality of learning. We have 20 minutes per station, and there are 3 of the stations. The students will rotate through all 3. Look at all these.
Wasn't that really exciting? So basically the content remains exactly the same. I love this video because I love the way the class is moving around and the excitement on children's faces. That is what you can get in if you actually vary your process and instruction. So if you see, it was basically station rotation that they were working on. If you work on station rotation, you will make sure that the content remains the same and all the students are exposed to a variety. The moment they see a variety, they are really excited and the enthusiasm remains to learn. And once the children take the onus of learning, you've achieved it. All you need to be there is to just move around, facilitate, and just kind of nod your head, help them out. If there is a question, ask a probing question, and that's it. So if you look around in this, what you need to do is that have your presentations. If you are putting up a station which is going to have content on it, you can use your audio. You can record a voice and just get your listening skills of students enhanced. So do not have any pictures or anything, record something. You can even get a lot of podcasts downloaded and you send it to them. If you're working in a asynchronous mode, you can send it to them. If you're working in a synchronous mode, you can put it on your laptop, and when you're running a class, make them listen to it. Have a blank screen for them so that they're not distracted. Get them to listen to that. So in this way, you are also getting them to understand the content, but also enhancing their skills for listening. Subtitling really helps. Please continue using that as and when required for your children, because simpler words are always easy to read, especially most of these podcasts that they come with an accent. And a lot of our children find it difficult to understand and grasp that speed and that accent. So either you record your voice and you put it, because they're used to your tone. Or if you are downloading something, then please put those subtitles. Edpuzzle is an amazing app. Please try using it. Of course, the groupings that you're going to be doing, depending on what is it that you are making your stations on. If you have a station which is going to be based on reading, try and put one group together which has all the right requisite reading abilities, and maybe another group which is slightly struggling to read, because when that group moves to the reading table, you can be there to support them. And by that time, the other group has moved to the other table. So the students will keep rotating within these tables. You will always find you are there to support one table, and there'll be other 2 tables which will be working independently. You could even send assignments which are tiered And or when I say tiered, it means that they could have varied levels. So same thing, you could have something when you're working on say multiplication, you could have an assignment when it is sent to a child. If he's doing 2-digit with a single digit, you send an assignment which is only 2-digit with a single digit. Similarly, if you are ensuring that your grade level children are going to be working with 2 digits with 2 digits, you send the other students 2 digits with 2 digits. So that's how you can vary your assignments as well. Use a lot of reading tools as well, where your child is able to listen and understand. Of course, your centers or the tables or the stations that you make, they have to be extremely interesting. They can't be the same boring ones, go write out an answer or go do the addition sums, because that will put off the child completely. They have to be designed in such a way that they are extremely interesting, they are engrossing, and they are attractive to the child. Like even in this case, if you see, there were children who were on their laptops. So if you talk about in the remote learning that we are doing now, you could have like a same topic which is being done. When you send them home, you tell 4 students, I want you to work on go and count the number of vegetables in the fridge. And based on the number of each vegetable, I want you to plot the bar graph. Whereas for another student, you could say the same thing, but you could tell him that why don't you pick up the AQI pollution levels from the newspaper and actually plot the bar graph. So you can vary these kind of things and give it to the child. Of course, give a lot of manipulative and hands-on. Especially, I know for math, a child needs to visualize math. He has to be able to see. Maths is not just numbers on paper and pencil. He has to hold things in his hand. He has to count. He has to add. He has to multiply. If it is fractions, he has to see the part being divided. Use a lot of things at home, like your egg trays. You can use chocolates at home to be dividing. It can be an apple which is being cut into so many parts. It can be homemade pizzas which are being cut into parts. This is one of the most cliched examples. I'm sorry for giving that. But pizzas and cakes are something most cliched about, I think. So we can be a little more innovative. It could be, a handful of rajmas. Count the number of kidney beans in it, and then give half of it to your mom, or give 1/3 of it to your mom. So you can use these kind of manipulative. Also in remote learning, another very important aspect is because we are limited in time, usually the platforms that we use or the timing that we've given to the parents would be like 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So a lot of activities could finish there, but sometimes not enough time is there for your child to completely grasp that particular concept. So use the manipulative so that you can continue it back even later on at home. So give him that pace. Don't rush. Don't hurry it up. No, it has to get over in 30 minutes. No, it has to get over in 40 minutes. The idea is the child has to understand the concept. Our focus is not the time. So be careful about that. So this is something which I have practically done in my class. So I'm telling you with experience. This was my grade 4. I was trying to get them to do equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions, I'm sure for all of you who teach equivalent fractions, is one of the most difficult concepts for them to understand. What I did was that based on, their past understanding of fractions, I divided them into 3 groups. So what I did was, my one group was working with the typical manipulative which we all use in class, which is Joro Gyan. Of course, if you are working at home, you can use various other things. So they can keep cutting it to create it. The other one which we used was to create the fraction strip for the wall. They cut out papers and then they color and they try and find out that half is always equal to 2 1/4. 2 1/4 will be equal to 4 of 1/8. So that's where the equivalent fraction will start coming in. Of course, you will always have children who will be slightly more comfortable with this kind of a concept, and you need to give them something more challenging. So I gave them a basket and I asked certain students of mine that one student gets 3 turns, the other student gets 6 turns, and the next one gets 9 turns to shoot the basket. And once you've done it, I want to know who's a better player in that. The children immediately said, this is unfair because you've not given us the equal number of turns. So I said, but I'm not giving you any more turns. Try and make it equal. And immediately children were making connections that, okay, 3, if I double it, it'll become 6. And that's how equivalent fractions. So all I did was, my content was the same. My final learning outcome was the same. I just changed the process to keep them engaged and to keep them excited about the whole thing. So this is one way. Of course, the similar thing that I said, you could also give a lot of exemplars to them. You could use a lot of real life projects with them. You could also get them, since they are at home, tell them to cut out paper. They can use Lego blocks if they have, and they can start using these. And that's how a topic like fractions can be dealt at home.
Sonia, we do have a couple of questions that have come in, if you'd
Yes.
just like to take some of those.
Sure.
So there's a question from Sonal, who was asking that at times when we're practicing differentiation in classrooms, it does create a concern where learners start talking about the child and somehow the matter then is escalated to the parents. How would you recommend that a situation like that could be handled?
Yes, Sonal, fantastic. I know this is the biggest problem that most of the time the teachers face this. That's why the first thing that I had said was that we do not go on their abilities. We go by the concept that we are going to be covering on. Usually, you will always find that every child has that one strength. If you as a teacher, you can identify that one strength, you have to make sure that somewhere when you're doing these kind of groupings and you're giving them engagements, every child at one time has to be appreciated on the fact that he is brilliant in this. So the moment children realize that, it's fine to have certain challenges in you because I have certain other strengths, they stop bothering about it. So make sure that you appreciate and you get to know the strength of each child in your class. Also, at times when you talk within your class, you never use the word that I'm differentiating. All you are trying to tell them is to keep everyone engaged. I'm using different engagements. So we are going to be working in groups and we will work differently. And that's it. And you start moving around among all of them. So you will find that children take to each other very comfortably. And by the time they grow up and they are into grade 4 and 5, the upper primary, you will find even though they are aware of it, but they are sensitive to the issue. They will start empathizing. They are the ones who start, helping the other peer understand. But do recognize the strength of each child and actually do it. So if there is a child who's struggling with math and his writing skills as well, maybe you can ask him to create a rap song and present it. I've done that at times. And just because the child is very good with music, so get them to do that. You can tell them to do a role play and do it. I hope that answers your question.
Some lovely suggestions there. Thank you for that, Sonia. Two more people coming up with questions. Rajni, I'm going to unmute your mic. Please go ahead and ask your question. Rajni, are you with us? Okay, maybe not. Okay, Yogita also has a question. Yogita has been raising her hand. So Yogita, go right ahead and you can ask Sonia your question. I don't know if either of them are there, but their mics seem to be both of them. Yogita, you'll need to unmute your microphone before you can ask your question. While you're doing that, I'm just going to give the floor over to Nashmi. Okay, everybody seems to have unmuted themselves. They seem to have muted themselves for some reason when the moment they've been given permission to talk, but that's fine, no worries. Ladies, if all of you would like to put out your questions in the chat box and we'll come back to these questions as the session progresses. Thank you. Sonia, back over to you.
Thank you. So now to the third way is what we talk about, which is the product differentiation. This is the final outcome that we were talking about. There was somebody who had mentioned that, you can vary the outcome as well. This is something which must require the maximum differentiation, at least in the primary years. Because in primary years, what we are looking at is the child actually picking up the concepts and the skills. So if you are sure that the child has understood the particular concept, he must have that choice and his voice to express it the way that he wants. It should not be where I am laying down the 6 question answers for a test and that is all that he is going to be doing. So you must give him a choice to bring out his voice. This is something which rhymes very well, and I find it's one of the most beautiful things to be doing. Because the moment you tell your students that, okay, how would you like to show me that you have got this concept or you have understood the concept, you will find all of them come up with different ways. Somebody would want to draw, somebody would want to write, somebody would want to use both the things. So which is absolutely fine as long as they are understanding the concept. They can use, their students now who really want to use all the ICT tools, please give them that kind of freedom to use the ICT tools. They can do that. The same thing, the presentation can happen as a group, it can happen individually as well. Allow them to be creative. It's in these primary years that creativity actually can be enhanced, because once they have developed this creative skill, it's going to be used all through their life. And the last, one submission is not the final submission. Please do not base your review on just that one submission. Allow them to make changes. Allow them to edit their own work, and it can always come back. So I'll go through another example. So this was basically on researching on natural resources. And this is where students visited the Yamuna Walk. This is one of the most popular engagement which most of the schools, I think, at least in Delhi NCR, positively follow, is to go and visit Yamuna to understand the effect of human impact on the river that we've done. So I've had children where they could in any way run a drive where they can talk about, remember this which had come up, Rally for Rivers. So they could make a poster. Now the app that they used for this was Canva, or through my language, because I know of certain children whose strength is to express themselves in a particular language, I could also get them to understand what writing a news article is. And I told them you could write a news article about a particular thing. So they researched and then they finally wrote the news article. So you can vary the product as well. You could have children doing a rap song, you could have a children doing up a little play. For the play, you can even ask them to write out a little script for it, because then you can assess that particular script. Most important for your product in a differentiation is that you specify your success criteria. You tell them that what is it that you're looking at. If you are looking at specific content, please tell them what is it that is your expectation. Because if they know that expectation, that is the only way they will be able to put all of that, whether through a poster, whether through a flyer, whether they want to create a news article, whether they want to write an essay, or they want to make a story out of it. They can do it as long as they know the success criteria. So that is something which is very, very important. And this is the same thing what Carol also spoke, that when you do any of such kind of assessments of how well the student has understood, please share your success criteria or your rubrics or your criteria that you are creating. Finally, the last one, which is the environment differentiation. This becomes most active, especially in the condition that we are staying in right now. Because most of the time, it's easy for us in school because we've planned out our whole year. So the kind of manipulative and resources we were already set with and we are ready with, we know when this chapter comes in, these are the manipulatives I'm going to pick up and I'm going to use. But now being at home, when I'm trying to run a class through a laptop screen, it becomes very, very difficult. So I will need to think of resources which a child can relate to, which are just within the four walls of his house. He can't go out, so you will have to make sure. We can't even think of using the garden because not necessarily everyone will have a garden. So a lot of things you will have to base on his home culture, the things which are around him, his family, and allow him to work at his own pace. You can, of course, get them to combine, these are for the older ones, where they can put in all the information together on your Google Drives, OneDrive, Padlet, Poplet. These are all collaborative online tools where you can also become a part of it. You create these for them and you can all collaboratively work together. And yes, if you have somewhere a limited time slot where you want to make it exciting for children, use your timing apps which come there. I know for one, there is something which is like a bomb. So if you've given them a task and you're telling them to complete it in 2 minutes, download that app from Google. It is a normal timer bomb. and it'll be visible on the screen, and that little wire will keep burning, and exactly after 2 minutes, there'll be a blast. It really gets children excited, and it also gets them to complete their work in that specific time period that you're giving and not be distracted at home. Very useful for these remote classes that you are doing. This is specifically an example I picked up for the little children. So there, in case if you're trying to do something on materials, this is another very popular, chapter or a topic which every school does for the little ones. So if you have to try and use the material, use something which is available at home, get them to understand. And of course, I've shown alongside it how you can actually put it on OneDrive or Google. Whatever responses are coming in, you can start typing. There is something which is called your visible thinking routines. I'm not too sure how many of you are familiar with it, but that is another way that you can actually use for your children, and that brings about differentiation also, and it develops critical thinking skills as well. I'm sure we can discuss with Pallavi and maybe sometime later have another webinar on just visible thinking routines. So this is some online apps which I kind of collated it together. I'm sure Pallavi is later on going to be sending this like a document to you. These are some of them. Please try using them in this time so that all our children, I'm not even saying maximum number of children, but I want that all our children can benefit from all of these. You will be able to differentiate from them. You will be able to see the kind of outcome that comes from them, will give you a lot of excitement for this. Some of the credits, I'm just acknowledging some of the websites that I've used. Special thanks to Edutopia, EduTrends Online, and of course, teachthought.com. Any question answers?
We do already have a couple of questions. Sonia, Shalu has a question. Shalu, your mic is now unmuted. Please go ahead and ask your question. I'm not so sure why everybody seems to go on mute the minute I allow them to speak. Maybe it's a technical issue that we're having today, but Shalu, if you had a question, you might want to put it down in the chat box, and I'll read it out to Sonia so she can address it for you. But if there are any other questions that you'd like Sonia to address, Sonia Sonal wanted to ask if there are any apps which help learners respond or write in language B, which is Hindi, while taking an online class. Any specific apps for Hindi?
A lot of times, at least what I have seen, is they need to change that particular font and they will need to write. So the difficult situation that comes in is that the child has to be familiar with the keyboard. So if this is a question directed for grade 4 and 5, grade 4 and 5 can easily work with that kind of a keyboard, but for the younger ones, it becomes a little difficult. So what they need to do is more for writing on a paper and maybe then scanning it and sending it to the teacher.
Okay, great. Sonal, I hope that addresses your question. Jyoti is asking if these apps are free to use, Sonia?
They all have a trial version for sure. I know some of them are completely free, but at least for the time period you can. Just a few of them where maybe for a higher experience you might need to do it. Like I know for one, like Mentimeter, what I just used, quite a bit of it is free, but certain parts of it you need to pay for it.
Okay, that's super. I'll also make a mention of that when I send out the document to all of you with all of these apps. I'll send this across right after we're done with the webinar today for you to be able to see, as well as the recording of the webinar. Ujita Sonia is asking if you have any specific techniques that you can share for helping children who have ADHD. How can you accommodate these children when we are running online classes?
Okay, so ADHD, again, like what I said, was differentiation. We usually do not cater to the special needs. Special needs is something which is done completely different scenario. So usually schools will always have a special educator, but I do understand that in a synchronous classroom like this, if the child is there, it gets a little difficult. So you will have to actually gauge what is it that the child really enjoys. So I know of some children who like to keep their hands busy, and that's when they can actually focus on. Also, because their attention span is really, really less. So you give them a particular engagement which lasts just about 5 minutes, and you put that timer for them, and you can easily tell them that after 5 minutes, once you are done, you can easily get up, go take a walk, and come back with one of your favorite things to share with me. So the child is actually looking forward to the thing that I can get up from here. I don't need to sit for 40 minutes on this chair itself. So the moment you allow and you give them that kind of freedom, those children you will find will be getting up and moving about, but will not result into any behavioral issues.
That sounds great. Thank you for that, Sonia. One last question from Jyoti, who's asking if is there any which way how when we practice differentiation, do we somehow end up ignoring children who are above average?
Absolutely no, absolutely. So that's why I said, because the moment if you ignore those children, you will have children, always in a class you will find the naughty ones are always the very bright ones. So that's because they've understood your concept and they've finished it. So, and usually we as teachers, or at least I have seen when I was a kid, all that used to happen was that if I was good in a particular subject, all that I always did was, because I finished my work, my teacher used to give me another sheet. Okay, complete this now. And that used to switch me off completely. So what you need to give is not at the same level. Vary the content for that particular child. So the higher ability children who you feel are brighter, or what we call as, like they can reach to higher, give them that challenge to go a little further. Give them a project to be doing. So something like, if it is on, suppose, writing, you can use an app which is called writereader.com, and you can get them to write a complete story. So every time that they finish their task, you can say you can get back to completing that story. And when you finish the writing that book, I'm going to use that book for the next grade that comes into my class, and I'm going to use that as a reading tool. It motivates that child and it keeps him excited about it.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Sonia. Bina's put out another question where she's asking if there are any specific APP for summative assessments after a cycle or so?
According to me, I think in primary, our assessments should always be ongoing. So I know for certain national curriculums or certain other curriculums, we do have to follow a particular cycle. So even in that particular cycle, even for your differentiation, if before that particular cycle, if you can take a short little assessment to assess each group or each child to understand
like
that from that level. So I think that's very important.
Absolutely. That sounds excellent. Okay, so Jyoti, I hope that answered your question. And with that, we'd like to bring today's webinar to a wrap. Thank you so much, Sonia. That was extremely useful. Some great strategies in there for primary school teachers to take home immediately and start applying as well. I will be sharing with you a list of all the apps that Sonia had just talked about. I will send that across to all of you in an email. You'll receive that shortly. And if there are any other questions that you would like, please feel free to post these up on our Facebook page, as well as on any of our Instagram or Twitter handles, and we'll be sure to let Sonia answer these for you as well. And do let us know if there are any other specific primary school requirements, if there are things that you would need help with that you would like us to organize sessions on, and we'll definitely try and put those together for you. In the meanwhile, thank you once again, Sonia, for being here with us today. Thank you to all the participants, and have a wonderful evening ahead, all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.